Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I'm joined by Jarod Bowersett. Jarod brings a background in sales and has been going deep into AI for real estate investors for the past couple of years. We talk a lot about all the hidden quality leads that are sitting in your CRM that you're not monetizing right now. I'll see you there. Jarod, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Great, brother. How you doing?
Hey, fantastic. Thank you. It's great to finally meet you after some time. We've been kind of in the same vicinity, but haven't quite met each other. For anybody listening to the podcast that doesn't know who you are, what's the story? Where'd you come from? What do you do? And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. My background, so prior to getting into real estate investing or just real estate in general, was really in enterprise level sales. And so I've got about 15 years of experience in what you might call high ticket sales. My typical deal size was like 25 to 50 million dollars, and it would typically take 18, 24 months to close. So, big long sales cycles, and I've helped, kind of during that time I developed sales teams, some strategies. But I've always been like just a lover of sales and sales problems and challenges. And so I was always like dabbling in the real estate investing space, and more formally, a couple of years ago, I cut over to, hey, this is going to be like the full-time thing. I get a lot of enjoyment out of this. And I found like very quickly that a lot of operators, specifically, residential real estate investors, have like the same exact problem over and over. And they'll have these crazy revenue cycles that ultimately end up constraining their ability to grow. And one second to the next, it's just like constantly putting out fires. They're calling somebody like Brandon Bateman and like, hey, I need I need 100 more leads tomorrow, right? And it's always kind of this effort to like kind of purchase consistency back into the revenue cycle. And so from my standpoint and my background, I'm like, this just sounds like a fun sales problem to help solve for, right? Because really, if you actually like break down an investor's business, there's all of their answers like right there. And the better operators, the ones that are more seasoned and they've probably got a whole sales team that are behind it, they've built the processes and the teams and they do an adequate job about finding a way to deliver consistency, whether that's the opportunity or kind of like the closing ratio. But for so many of the investors that kind of live in the in between, that just became like a curiosity itch that I could just not stay away from and try to solve for. So that's kind of like what led us to launch our product today, which is really, in my opinion, right, the solution to help drive consistency into like a lot of these operators' pipeline. So hopefully that was the question you were looking for.
Yeah, it's a solid overview. So let's talk. So I understand the enterprise sales background. It's funny when when you said 25 to 50, the word that came in my mind was thousand, and then you said million. I was like, oh, well, that's different from real estate investment. Totally different in every single possible way, right? So you went from that to, one thousand, the deal size or whatever it is. That's insane. So tell me about like your journey into real estate investment. Help me understand like the companies you're involved in. So it sounds like you have like a real estate investing business, and you also have a business that helps real estate investors. Did I understand that right?
Yeah, so my partner and I, we own a wholesale operation primarily engaged in the Northeast. So New Jersey is kind of like our primary target market. And a very traditional, fix and flip. We do some assignments, some novations, some wholesaling. We have a little bit of, agent business, or sorry, retail business that might take place. And a couple of years ago, we launched a startup, and that's really kind of been my baby for the better part of the 2.5 years. And we've done a couple different like sales related things. Actually, one might be an interesting story how all this kind of came to be from a product standpoint. So my partner Bill and I, this goes back 2023, probably like midway 2023. He approached me, and he knew I had kind of always been in like the SaaS environment, very informed from like the startup standpoint. I wouldn't say I have development chops, but I have connections into those spaces. And he had approached me. He's like, "Hey, I've just got this insatiable urge. Like, there's all of these listed properties that are around me right now. Like, I find it hard to believe that I can't convert some of these opportunities, into a good investment." So we just put our heads together, and we'd heard some other people doing this in the past. We're like, hey, we'll just send out the listing agent an offer written up at 70% of whatever it's listed for, and let's just see what happens. So we targeted all the properties that had been on in the market 90 plus days. We sent out 150 test offers. Well, he ends up landing like a couple of those deals under contract. So the sales guy in me is like, oh wait, we got some product market fit, and we ended up taking a year and basically beta testing and developing a product that we launched out to a couple bigger like operating teams, MSAs, whatever you want to call them, to do nothing but this, which is like MLS marketing. But the learning from this was actually the fact that every single offer that we'd send out, we would get a 40 to an 80% response rate. So it was creating this crazy like influx of conversations that were now taking place with really our customers. And so we had to put our heads together and like, hey, how can we solve for this better? And we really just came up with a very simple premise. Hey, like we'll use some AI. We will monitor the way that our customers are responding and following up with leads. We'll serve those back in the form of suggested actions. And anytime that we find like a lookalike situation like that in the future, and let's just see what happens. Well, and this still actually blows my mind today. We went from our customers spending like hours and hours and hours trying to like get through their inbox to about 20 minutes was the average time that it took our typical like user to actually completely go through an entire book of leads. We're like, something interesting. So we just had some more conversations. Well, that's really what led us down this road of like, hey, we actually have a bigger thing that we're trying to solve for, right? And it's like this like a process to really adjudicate leads and manage leads through your pipeline, because like it's just there's a lot of inefficiency as I'm sure you're well aware of. You've got this lead channel and you got to handle it this way. You've got this lead channel, you got to handle it this way. You've also got these three different types of salespeople. How do they all fit into the different equations? Well, we can basically just automate a lot of that just through some sales monitoring, right? Just like kind of create these mirror images of what your sales team was doing. Well, that steamrolled really into our product today. So that was probably a bigger answer than you were looking for, but it was a very humbling experience to not like say like, oh, we're just going to build this because this makes a lot of sense, and we just kind of figured it out along the way.
Yeah, so it seems like in business, usually the fastest point between point A and point B is like a bunch of circles around point A and then eventually landing at point B. It's not like a straight line. At least not for me. There's probably somebody out there who's way smarter than me who's figured out how to
Yeah.
do it exactly like that. So let's talk about like your perspective on real estate investing as a whole, right? We talked about that a little bit just at the beginning. You said we're going through this revenue roller coaster in the real estate investing business. And I couldn't agree with you more. We have so many clients where like one day they're saying like double down. I want to spend an extra 20 grand a month. Things are awesome. We just closed a bunch of deals. And we have times where they're like, I need to pause marketing for 30 days probably while I can get some cash in the bank account. And,
Yeah.
and I think some of that is inconsistency in revenue, and some of that is cash conversion cycle, which just happens to be long. Oftentimes, when you close a deal, you're actually negative in cash because now you're putting more money into this deal. And how many businesses are like that, right? So there's a lot that makes it kind of like naturally a little bit more of a roller coaster than a lot of businesses. So I'm really curious how you approach solving that particular problem, because what I heard so far from you is, hey, can we take some sales activities and can we make it so that they're done more efficiently? And in theory, if we just do all the same stuff we were doing, but we do it now efficiently, we have the same revenue roller coaster. We're just more efficiently getting there. So I'm curious like how you apply this to the roller coaster.
Yeah, so there's some data to back this up. Some stuff that we've figured out through deploying our model now with a whole bunch of different operating teams. But um, I'm going to skip the actual sales cycle for just a second and just say, we all know that moving a real estate transaction from lead to close is like a long cycle. Well, the industry average is 145 days, but there's 30 to 100 hours of actual manual effort and activity that are needed once once a deal goes under a contract to the point of closure, right? So just logically thinking, if I'm an operator and maybe there's a couple guys that work on my team, maybe it's just me, right? I'm like devoting all of my effort to the front end of my business to go get contracts. But then once I have one, like I have no other option but to spend all of my effort and energy to now, of course, get this deal across the finish line. And that's the right thing to do, right? Every deal is unique. It's a very complex process, right? There's, of course, buyers that I got to go connect this with, or maybe I'm flipping it, like whatever that looks like. So then that's the reason, right, that these roller coasters are typically having. It's this diversion of attention. It's the long cash conversion cycles. It's kind of a compounding effort of all of those things. But What we can solve for though is we can really eliminate the entire front end of that funnel in a lot of ways, right? So it takes 7.5 hours of prospecting energy to generate 1 hour of sales energy, meaning really just negotiation time, right? Time on the phone with a like a real time seller. So if we can automate all of that, or at least 80% of that, we can stabilize basically, most of that marketing funnel all the way up to the point where we're making contact with the salesperson. If we can stabilize that, well, at least that sales activity that does need to take place is more impactful, right? They're able to, in theory, assume you've got some good sales guys in your room, convert more of those opportunities kind of over now into the second half of the business and carry it across the finish line. So so here's some numbers. We've just by doing this now for a little while, we can cover about 80% of lead in the door all the way to qualified and out the door. And that ends up creating a 25 to 40% lift in profits without spending additional money on marketing. So, okay, well, why the hell is that? Let's just take, and I'll give you an example. Let's just take 100 leads that come in the door today, right? And let's just say they're from Brandon Bateman's team, and I'm able to. What's an average conversion rate on your like an average customer for you guys, roughly, give or take?
Usually gross lead. So, this isn't necessarily qualified. It could be spam, whatever. It's usually about 15 leads per contract.
Okay, so 15 leads per contract. So we'll say then that 15 of those we're going to convert right here, right now. Fantastic. I'm off to the races. I've already spent the money with you, right? I'm now off on to the next month, and I'm hopefully making a ton of money. What often forget like is the untold story in the sales world is what happens after that month. What happens in the next 6 months? What happens in the next 9 months? What happens in the next 12 months with that exact same sample, right? And so if we can just increase the amount of time that we attack or really use good sales efforts, which is really just mostly calling, right? It's mostly calling. It could be texting, it could be emailing, but just do those things. I have a 30% increase every 3 to 6 months on my convertibility of those contracts. So there's a term called conversion decay, which is like a relationship to time. So every 9 months, I should be able to convert the same level 80% of the same level of the conversion. So whatever 80% is of 15, every 9 months, I should be able to get that basically in my door. So whole point being, right? Like if you take just those numbers, right? And I just now play that out over the next 18 months, I should be able to convert 45% of that same list with no additional marketing spend. And well, at least for us, that's no human capital that's needed at all, right? But now whatever your cost per contract is or your total deal size, it's significant, right? So even for like a small team, being able to attack and like prospect and like do the right sales motions, even without like the help of an AI, can completely change the dynamic. But it gets missed, right? Because it's not high converting. It's not the sexy stuff. It's not all of the conversations you want to have immediately.
Yeah, I mean, hour for hour of effort, it converts less deals, but it converts more out of the marketing dollars you already spent, right? That's the big difference. Yeah, an interesting stat for you, Jared. Um, it wasn't too long ago. I kind of had the curiosity. I wonder how long it takes for our clients to turn a lead into a contract, because that PPC is one of the fastest converting channels. SEO right there along with it. Facebook a little bit slower, right? Those are the three channels that we manage. So I took PPC as a sample. I just said like, well, how long does it take for our clients to convert contracts? And believe it or not, this was a shock to me. The median number of days between when the lead came in and when the contract came in was 1.3 days,
Huh.
which basically meant these leads were coming in and we were closing them fast. But here's the other crazy thing. I took some of our clients that have been really successful with us for years, that had the absolute best returns on investment. And I look at the deals that they're doing on a monthly basis. And about 50% of their deals from PPC were from leads that came in the past 30 days. The other 50% were from leads that are more than 30 days old, right? So these are companies that are really, really good at follow up, right? So when I tell you that 15 leads per contract number, that's with a median of 1.3 days until close, right? But when you start to really open it up and you say over time, how do these things convert? And the reality is we just don't always get that feedback because, it could be well, like we just had a client who came back to us after years. They left because they had a bad return on investment. They came back and they were like, well, actually, we looked back on it and we have an 8x return on investment. And we didn't realize
Yeah.
that we hadn't made extra return on investment because all these deals ended up closing like later, that
Yeah.
they from leads that were generated during that time period. And so much of that is based on your follow-up process. But I can tell you, it's even in my own business, like it is so hard to be really consistently on top of all of those leads after and like for PPC, usually people look at it like there's, a lot of people say there's like 7 or 10 days from hell at the beginning where you're just like calling these leads like way more times than you usually would and all that kind of stuff. Because of that 1.3 days, it's so important to hit them really hard at the beginning. But it's wild how much gold is just sitting there in people's
Yeah.
CRMs. It's just waiting to be mined. And your own like inability as an operator to be really, really consistent with those difficult long-term activities can basically you know leave that gold like unharvested
Yeah.
that's just sitting there in your CRM. So it's wild. So I love that you guys do that. Is I guess what I'm saying. I think it's really powerful.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and I'll take an 8x a ROAS every single day of the week, right? Not spending enough in
Oh,
that point. Give me,
yeah,
I need to spend
seriously.
more money with you.
Yeah, yeah, that's insane. So I'm curious if you have any metrics, and I know this is going to vary a ton by different channels, right? Like if you've got a whole bunch of really high quality leads sitting in your CRM that you just didn't close, you're going to pull a lot out of that list when you start to do follow up. But a
Mhm.
lot of people have, less quality in there or less numbers and stuff like that. When you're looking at it and you're just trying to judge, when we start following up with old leads in the CRM, this is the outcome that we expect. How do you start to quantify that?
We look at a couple different variables. Number one thing that we're looking at right now, just with our product, is talk time. Specifically, like median talk time. Like on average, how long can we keep somebody on the phone? Then there's like qualification rate. For us, in this. We actually just grabbed this number as of last week. But for all of, and we did our best to isolate what you might call like brand new leads. So where,
Mhm.
your team essentially is going to like zap something in versus like just give me your garbage. But on just the follow up stuff, so long term follow up, we're able to, for every 11 calls that we make contact with somebody, we're able to book another appointment. And by the way, like our model isn't just booking appointments; it's actually qualifying, right? So it's gonna grab timeline, price point, and motivation. So there is some level of inherent, like, okay, we're probably pushing a bunch of those away. Some of them probably just flat out aren't even good quality leads anymore. They might be dead. But generally, very surprised that here's another number that you might find impressive. So this isn't our data. This is the kind of the synthesis of a couple different studies. But so in our space, so REI space specifically, non-commercial, so this is just residential. If you look at investor activity, 27% of leads that come through the door will never make contact. That's not for everybody, right? Like some teams are going to be better, some teams are going to be worse, but 27%. So almost a third. That's a lot. And if you actually break that down, so there's another study that broke that kind of that subsection down. There's really only about 10 to 11% of those leads that truly have bad contact information. So the answer is like, here I had somebody that engaged with me in some different shape or form. They raised their hand and they shared their contact information with me, but then they just never picked up the phone. And there's a follow up problem here that I'll hit on in a second, but that tells me one of like two very important things. Number one, like there is some sort of intention, right, from the marketing speak. There was definitely some sort of activation of that customer to become interested. So they're probably problem aware. They might even now be solution aware. And then for whatever reason, they got cold feet, right? And now you're gonna bang on their phone a whole bunch of times. And I'm just never gonna pick up because maybe I don't know. Maybe it's like a shot to my ego. Maybe I'm just not ready, right? Like whatever the situation might be. But here's the craziest part about that. 96% of all of those people in that bucket sold in 18 months. 96%. So, um, and whatever, there's some backing data that's behind that as well. But like that was like a fascinating finding for us just to kind of like look through some of those numbers because that truly says like this is a timeline problem, right? You hit somebody at the wrong time, like they might have told you that they're raising their hands at the right time, but you just got to stick with it, right? You got to hang in there for the duration. You got to try and get this person on the phone because that's high enough intent for me, right? That's not a cold call lead if they're gonna almost guarantee to sell within the next year and a half. And yeah, it's maybe a little bit longer than your 1.3 days, but it's still something, right? That's going to be in your system for a while, and chances are you're just going to forget about it. So
That's a wild stat. 96% within 18
96%,
months they end up selling.
96%.
Yeah. Well, now I know, like my experience with this kind of stuff is it's like, oh, well, yeah, it's not a good lead because they didn't answer the phone. Which, I mean, that stat, 96% of those people sell within 18 months. Like that just proves that. Like there's a difference between the people who are communicative and the people who are qualified. And it doesn't, it's, I'm sure there's something to it. Like I'm sure some of those people aren't qualified, but there could be a lot of really good leads that just don't answer the phone. So would your recommendation with those be like, are you saying, you know what, give leads to the AI system, let them call them like straight out of the gate? Or are you saying let humans take care of it for X amount of time and then eventually hand it off to the AI system for long-term follow-up? Like what's your official recommendation on how to manage those things?
If you're asking me as the co-founder of a tech startup, I'm going to tell you, you just give us it all, and we're going to do not necessarily a better job like versus a human. Like if you got a human on the phone versus an AI, like the human's still going to beat them out, right? But what we're going to do a better job at is the level of like tenacity in order to get that person on the phone, right? Which is really the job to be done
Really
here.
perfectly consistent, like robotically
Right.
consistent on a level that
Right.
humans just cannot. You'll
Yeah.
always call the leads super quickly. You'll call them super consistently. You don't, get scared that someone's going to say no, so back off. Like there's, all the problems that we deal with, like you don't have, except for the fact that you're not a human.
Yeah. The Here's a funny story for you. This is like late January. We were doing a review on some of our performance stuff. We had a lead that we'd converted into an appointment, and I kid you not, Brandon, we called the lead 200 times.
That's crazy.
It was on the 200th time or whatever, like the 200. It wasn't like 200 perfect, but it was like I think right around that number. But yeah, it was like on the 200th time they finally picked up and it converted into lead, right? So like back to the whole thing, I was just kind of walking through. Like that's why we're so galvanized on our opinion of like this is just like it could be an effort thing, right? Like this is partially an effort, it's partially a time problem that needs to be solved for. And like if you can, right now we're just muscling through it, right? Now like that's the cool thing you can do with AI is like for the first time ever we have technology that's just like there is no time box, there's no constraint from an effort or
Mhm.
energy, and like just let it rip. It's not perfect, right? But it works. It works really well.
Yeah, yeah, it's fair. I mean, it doesn't have the same problems that people do, so I get that. How do you think about like well, I am curious to push on something that you said before. So you said, okay, as the founder of the tech startup that does this, I say, yeah, just give us all the leads. Would you say something different from a different lens? Like let's just say you're thinking from a real estate operator lens. Like, is there ever a case where you're like, hey, my team is good at speed to lead and we are better on the phone out of the gate, and like this is a great solution for us, but it's only a great solution for us like after 7 days from when a lead comes in. But like in that first little bit, like we're gonna handle it, but eventually we're gonna hand it off. Or maybe like after hours, we're gonna hand it off when we know our team's not gonna get to the leads quickly, or whatever the case is, right? There's all kinds of different ways you can draw the line of like this is officially a really high value hot lead. And then as it starts to get colder, it's like, well, maybe it's not worth my time to follow up with it, but it is worth having AI call it.
Yeah, I mean, you really nailed it. It's two part, right? It is a personal preference. Like I have these kind of sidebar battles with my partner who owns, he's the owner of this wholesale shop. And so he's like, yeah, like, do I really want an AI hitting my PPC lead as it comes in, right? Like, to your point, I'm gonna convert that in a day. Like that's probably something that you want the highest, most senior level person getting in front of. So like I understand that, right? And there's a good amount of spend that's behind that as well. Maybe it's the same conversation too for like a direct mail, right? Like I'm gonna spend a whole bunch of money on my direct mail campaign. I've got an inbound call that's coming in. How am I gonna handle that? But my point is the amount of effort that you are putting out to get that person on the phone, right? When I said the 7.5 hours of prospecting energy, all of that is just trying to get people on the phone, right? Like when we don't talk about prospecting as this like actually talking to people, like that's not really what we're referring to, right? It's all the effort to like get people to productive conversation, whether that's a yes or a no. So my kind of like the dividing line, right, is like the division of like, hey, is AI really as good as my team? Well, it depends on from what lens you're asking that question from, right? Because I'm taking it from the standpoint that, yeah, okay, sure. When we get that person on the phone, like who's better? I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that like right here at this point, February of 2026, yeah, humans are still better. But the AI is better at attacking it, right? It's better at being consistent. It's better at doing the follow up things that ultimately give us more opportunities to go out and close the business, right? And that's really kind of like what the problem is here, right? It's not the opportunity, it's more of those opportunities. It's the consistency of those opportunities over time.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. Well, this has been cool, Jared. Thank you for kind of enlightening me, sharing some different information. That was really cool. Is there anything else that you want to share before we start to wrap things up here?
No, man, I don't think so. It was great to do this and sit down with you and jam out. Like I said, we've been kind of circling each other's spheres for a while, and this was fun, man. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, likewise. Thank you, Jared. If somebody wants to get a hold of you or your company, which, by the way, we haven't even mentioned the name of the company or anything, you probably should. So, what's the company? What exactly do you guys do? How does someone get a hold of you if they want to talk to you?
Sure. So, Hey Rafi is the name of the company. You can go to heyrafi.com. From there, you could book a demo. You can also listen to our AI. You can even create an account for free and just kind of poke around on our application if you want to do that. Feel free to drop me a line as well. It's just Jared at heyrafi.com. That's RAFI.com, by the way. Those are probably the two best ways to reach us, to check us out, to explore things. And as far as just like a quick blurb on who we are, so we've developed really an AI prospecting model that'll handle outbound calling, emailing, and texting for primarily real estate investors, but also agent teams as well. And our model has been really built from some of the industry best players. So we've taken basically best practices from a lot of the big operating teams that are out there. We use that information to basically train our model and then serve that up to our teams. So would love to chat if anybody's interested.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Jared. And for everybody else listening, I'll see you next week.